It's just about 1:05, and I want to welcome everybody to another Chamber Roundtable. I'm Alfred Sanchez. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Miami Chamber. And today I think we have a very interesting program. We're going to hear from some of our top banking leaders. We're going to give us an update on the CARES Act and the new round of PPP loans that are about to come online. What you should know and what you should be doing for your business now and also in the future. And also, we're going to then focus the discussion on the future of banking and our banking leaders' thoughts of the economic the development that will be coming in the next several months. Just like chit chat for this afternoon. Look, as always, a very important part of our roundtables is the fact that we have a question and answer session at the end where you get to ask your burning questions. So let me go over some of the housekeeping rules to make our conversation efficient. First of all, in order to best manage the conversation, all participants are going to be placed on mute until after the presentation, and then there will be a Q&A session after the discussion. If you have a question, submit your question on the bottom tab where there's a Q&A button. Open that up and type your questions there. We're only going to take questions in writing, and for any general comments, or if you have a quick clarification question, if you'd like to communicate with one another, please use the chat room for that function. Again, only questions in the Q&A will be taken and taken up to the panel by our meeting administrator, Spencer Pilot. Now, there are going to be a lot more questions than we're able to answer probably, so we have folks behind the scenes, experts who will be trying their best to answer your questions on the chat and on the Q&A so that we get to as many of those questions as possible. I want to thank you all for making this a productive conversation. All right, so let me introduce today's sponsor. MBAF has been a member of the Chamber for a very long time, and our good friend Frank Gonzalez, he's the managing principal of and Miami principal in charge of the financial institutions and SEC practices. Frank, thank you for your sponsorship. Let me give it over to you.
Thank you so much, Alfred. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much to the Chamber for giving me the opportunity to say a couple of words. Again, I'm Frank Gonzalez, and I'm the managing principal of MBAF's Miami office. The topic that today's insightful panel will be discussing is certainly one of great importance to me and to my firm as we are working with clients who are impacted by the CARES Act. Let's just say at MBAF, and I'm sure for many of you as well, it has been eat, sleep, breathe CARES Act. As you know, banks providing CARES Act loans, especially Paycheck Protection Program loans, have been inundated with applications and have had to enhance their technological capabilities and resources to handle the load. Banks have also seen several regulatory guidelines come out from the federal banking regulators regarding treatment of troubled loans and supporting their bank customers and borrowers with payment deferment programs. At MBAF, we are working with banks on interpreting these guidelines and applying them correctly from an accounting and compliance standpoint. We are also assisting banks with potential additional regulatory reporting compliance guidelines for them to adhere to these requirements for federal bank examiners. On the other side, our clients have also leaned on us for support with preparing loan applications. We are helping to make sure they have the necessary supporting financial documentation to apply and qualify, including helping these clients prepare and maintain proper financial documentation to support compliance with their loans and also to qualify for any of the forgiveness requirements. In addition to our banking specific work, MBAF is supporting clients in a variety of industries and sizes by providing guidance and insights from a tax perspective and all the recent government assistance programs. We have and will continue to provide one-on-one assistance, webinars, podcasts, and detailed information through social media and the COVID-19 Resource Center on our website. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me or to any of our professionals at the firm if you have any questions or anything we can help you with. Thank you so much and good luck to all of you.
Thank you, Frank, and sincerest thanks to MBAF for your ongoing sponsorship of this event and also of your support of the Chamber. I also should mention that we have been partnering with MBAF for many years to put out a business survey, and we just put out today our special COVID series. And if you go to miamichamber.com, you will find a link to that that survey, which takes an early picture of the effect of the COVID virus crisis on our businesses. And we'll be taking an ongoing picture in June and again in September to look at the trends and changes throughout this very difficult time period. So again, thank you very much to MBAF. Well, with us this afternoon to discuss what I refer to as the Herculean task of getting funds out to our very needy business, small business community especially, are the heads of some of our most active PPP banks who have been SBA loan lenders for a while. And first, let me introduce Pablo Pino, who is the South Florida Market President for Commercial Banking for TD Bank, America's most convenient bank. And yes, my chairman pays me to say that. And then George Villacampa, who's a great friend. He's the Region Bank President for South Florida for Wells Fargo Bank. And of course, our very good friend and treasurer of the board and Miami Market President of Commercial Banking and Wealth Management Executive for First Horizon, Roberto Munoz. Thank you all for being a part of this. Now, let me introduce one of my very good friends, our moderator for the discussion today, the South Florida Market President of Retail for TD Bank, America's most convenient bank, and Chairman of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce, Felipe Basulto. Felipe, take it away.
Good afternoon, Alfred. Thank you so much. And thank you again also to Morrison Brown, Arguiz and Farah, and to my good childhood friend, Frank Gonzalez, for participating in sponsorship. This is a great topic, and I know it's been on the forefront for many folks to go ahead and ask a lot of questions, concerns. It's a lot that's been going on lately, and we're gonna go through and we're gonna share some of our experiences. And again, this is intended to be a thought-provoking discussion amongst some of our bankers who are members of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. So with that said, let's dive right in to the gentleman, and I'll pose a question individually for this one, which I think is critical because there's similarities and there could be differences. But let's take a look back first. So we obviously saw the CARES Act and engage with the Paycheck Protection Program, the SBA PPP, as we've all referred it. And by the way, I just want to give a couple of disclosures because I felt my dog nudging me behind me. He wants to participate on every single call that I do. So if he sticks his head out, he just wants to say hi to everybody, and he barks at everything he hears outside. So sorry about that. With that said, let's take a look back. Pablo and Jorge and Roberto, we went into a situation where all of a sudden we saw the SBA clear this, and obviously we got an immense influx of applications. Look back, talk to us about how you reacted, how you guys started assisting customers, the wins and what were the challenges, just to keep a synopsis. And we want to hear from all three of you. So I'm going to go ahead, and Mr. Villacampa, I'm going to start with you, sir. You're on mute, Jorge, by the way.
Is that any better?
There.
For asking me to be part of the panel. And like you said, this has been a very difficult task for all banks. When the website first opened, which was a few days after Congress passed the first $3.5 billion or whatever that number was, within 24 hours, that Sunday, we received 170,000 applications, totaling way over $3 billion. A task that's, we just can't process that many applications in a short period of time. But since then, there has been some additions by Congress, so we're feeling very good about where that's going. We're processing applications as fast as we can. We added more than 2,000 new team members from different areas of the bank to help with the processing. In fact, about 50 people from Miami have been assigned the sole task of processing application. These are highly qualified people that are working out of their homes and have been provided with all the equipment and training, et cetera, to process it. So it's been a very difficult situation to process all this and get it all going to the community. I should also mention that one of the things that we are also seeing in our branches, in fact, I was out today, is that a lot of customers are receiving their unemployment checks. So that's also helping the community quite a bit. And in addition to that, there's been a lot of deposits, right, of the additional funds that have been provided. For those customers who don't have bank accounts, the checks have been mailed. Many of them have them in their possession. They're effective tomorrow. However, we've been cashing them even though they're post-dated. So a lot of things going on in all of our branches, and it's keeping us very busy.
Thank you, Jorge, and definitely, it feels good to be helping out customers a lot, and love to hear how you guys did redistribute, more workers to probably an area of the bank or a process that they weren't as familiar with as some of the others. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch it over now to my counterpart at work and my dear friend, Mr. Pablo Pino, to share, talk to us about your experience, Pablo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for having us. It was difficult, right? We stood this up literally, this technology within less than a week. I think it was actually like 3 days. And we opened up on Monday, April 6th, I think it was. And it was difficult. There was a lot of glitches. The system was overwhelmed. It literally crashed a couple of times during that day. And then the next day got a little bit better, and ever since it's been much better. And we processed right through until the funds were available. Similar to what Jorge mentioned, we deployed, and it's all hands on deck. Every employee throughout the bank, including all of Felipe's direct reports, and their staff are 100% dedicated to processing applications. And when by the time it was all said and done, I believe we processed roughly 26,000 applications, and we continue to work and getting things ready for the second round. But it's been as everyone knows, I believe in the industry, we process like 3,000 applications on a normal year, right? And to process 26,000, within a week and a half is incredible. The amount of volume that has gone through the industry is incredible. It's multi-years. It's probably, people say, between 8 to 14 years of volume that literally just went through the system. So I think in general, the banks have done everything they can to get up and ready as fast as possible.
No, thank you, Pablo. Thank you for sharing that, and incredible volumes. And I love that you're previewing to the look ahead, because I know everybody's anxious about the look ahead with Congress's recent actions and the Senate, and Trump's already stated he'll sign it the moment it hits his desk. Roberto Munoz, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Listen, thank you very much for having me on the panel. I appreciate that, and I share the same sentiment as my two good friends that are on the phone with all of you, or as my good friends on the phone, because the reality is bankers are we have the first view, technically, on the financial shape of a lot of clients. And we've seen the disaster and the worry on the face and on the hands of those that are being affected today. Our bank was able to put together, sustain enough funding from the SBA to sustain about 100,000 jobs already, and with a lot more coming. We opened up also with the systems that have never used to this kind of volume. They crashed. The whole organization of our bank got together. We actually bought some new technology to help us process our SBA opportunity. We had a 5-member, 6-member SBA team. We didn't really have a real large SBA, as a lot of the banks historically did not. So everybody had to stand up systems very quickly. And I think the bankers have taken a big shot. We are all going to bed late. We're all waking up early. We're like first responders without being really directly in the field, although we have tellers that are handling checks and handling clients. And a lot of the branch people are in direct contact with potential coronavirus infection. So as first responders out in the field, we continue to do a very strong job in making sure that that the economy is in good shape. Number 2, that our clients are in good shape. Number 3, that we are responsible for the overall economic growth of the economy, and we continue to have that as our primary goal as development organizations. So thank you for that. We're working hard. We put as much money as we could until the money ran out. Thank goodness the SBA was there. They've done the best they can, but their systems, as Pablo was saying, and Jorge Villacampa, their systems were not set up for this volume. And in fact, we put out more loans in 14 days than they have put out in 14 years. And that's a tremendous volume. So anyway, we look forward to the next round, and we continue to process and know that our goal here is to help our community.
No, Roberto, thank you very much, and that's a great assessment. And I know Alfred was posting in the comment section as well as in the chat box some of those facts. So it's very interesting, you know, the incredible amount of work that we've done. And look, I think the banks, you know, even though we've taken the volumes and there's been, you know, momentary crashes and what we've seen, but you see the banks get back online and recuperating. And as a banker, I'm sorry, I'm going to defend it. It could have been through our channel, or you could have gone through the government channel, which, you know, that could have been a whole other way to look at and you know, it's not easy. It's not an easy process, but I know everybody's been working very hard. So again, we started with the you know, with the pieces, and I know there's been a lot of great success stories on funding, and I'm sure Jorge and Roberto and Pablo, you've heard phenomenal stories of people who have been funded. That's great. And there's a lot of people still concerned about funding. And now we're moving on to a next phase. And there's still people in process from the first wave, from what I understand. If you can shake your head, yes, I can acknowledge it for those who can't see the video, but we know that there's a lot of people still that are pending the response from the SBA, and they've already been processed through the banks, but I know they too are working through them. So that's fantastic. I want to take a look though a little bit ahead. So, you know, fortunately we've heard that Congress passed additional funding, and so number one, have we heard when they're going to reopen the gates in order to start reserving the funds as banks do through the E-Tran method, and in order to be able to secure the funds for the loans process? And you know, when do you think that'll be, and you know, how do you think that's going to progress forward? So I'm not sure who wants to go ahead and jump in. Pablo, Jorge, Roberto, anybody?
I hate to speculate, Felipe, yeah. But I think it will be happening fairly soon. As you said earlier, I think there are some deals going on and some changes that have to be made, and we want to make sure that we satisfy all the needs, which are huge because everybody has a need, whether it be consumers or municipalities or et cetera. They're huge needs. So I think that it's going to be happening pretty soon. It's anybody's guess when that will be. But we're all anxiously waiting so we can go ahead and continue to process and get some money out in the communities.
Yeah, no, great point. Hey, Pablo,
I'm venturing to say within 10 days.
Yeah.
There is, first of all, a lot of people with the E-Tran numbers that were not actually processed right up to the window and did not get funding. They have a number. Those are still in queue. We expect that queue maintained itself. However, I am telling my clients, please find out, stay on top of that, and if necessary, reapply and don't feel bad about it. But we do believe that the E-Tran numbers that they currently have in hand are good numbers, and they're verifiable for the next funding round. So they'll be the first ones up. At this moment, our bank has been handling mostly our current clients, and we started with our loans, our loan clients, and then we went as fast as we could to our deposit holders. And as soon as we satisfy this in this next round, we hope to be satisfying a lot of that. In this next round, we're going to go to new clients or new individuals that we don't know as clients officially, but they will have to open up a new checking account, etc. And we'll be processing them as new opportunities for the institution. But we do want to get to that because the need is great.
And Roberto, there's something to point out and circle back. I think some people don't understand that banks, you know, and I think for the most part, the banks opened up to their clientele, their customers, existing customers, and especially cut off after a specific date. And is it fair to say that that had to do a lot with and people might not realize that we have a customer identification programs, which are very tight and they're very specific on how we identify our customers, number one, and authenticate them. We're required by law to do so. And in addition to that, we have our Bank Secrecy Act and a lot of compliance factors around Know Your Customer, KYC, that affected the fact that we needed to proceed with people whom we knew, which is easier because in a normal lending process, there are certain steps taken where these applications definitely move quicker through a normal pipeline than they would oppose. Is that a fair assessment, Jorge, Pablo, and Roberto?
I confirm.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've heard the lawmakers respond and acknowledge the fact that they understand why banks are there, because they were frustrated with that in the beginning, but there's competing priorities there. So it's interesting. Gentlemen, by the way, I do want to recommend, if you can, there's a couple of questions that are coming up onto the question and answer guide that, if you want to type in, I'd rather we continue with our conversation. But for those listening, those questions are going to be pulled, and we'll have some time at the end in order to field some of those questions, but it gives you all a preview as to what we're going to be asking, depending on how many questions come in through the queue. So again, loved hearing about this. So before we move on from this subject, and I know we're harping on the PPP. We've gone over that. Is it fair to say, okay, a loan application, the PPP SBA loan required certain things of our customers? It's like any loan application. You apply for a credit card, it requires a name, a social security number, et cetera, et cetera. Is it fair to say that you all found that there was a lot of applications that had missing, incorrect, or incomplete information? And I'm going to go over to you first, Pablo.
Absolutely, Felipe. I think that is the issue with the delay in processing, either missing documentation or also that the application wasn't completed correctly. There's certain sections, I believe it's questions 5 and 6. A lot of folks did not. We found that a lot of folks did not initial those and answer those correctly. So the banks have to go back to the customers and ensure that the application is in good order. So that caused a lot of delays. Also, we, at least our experiences is we're actually funding, the paperwork we're actually using mobile numbers. So making sure that an accurate email address and a mobile number is provided is key. So making sure that your application is filled out correctly and the documentation is uploaded, it'll be key to getting that application going. Otherwise, it's going to sit in a queue, and then you're going to have a lot of communication back and forth with a banker trying to get that information from you. The next round is going to go probably as fast as this one, or maybe even faster. So it is key that everyone completes it and provides the documentation necessary to move this thing along quickly.
Yeah, and I know the teams, from what I've heard too, that unlike some companies that have their own in-house financial team, some small business owners, there are some very specific documents the SBA has required by law, and some of them have a little bit more of a challenge securing that documentation, and therefore their speed to market might be a little bit tougher. But Jorge, anything you wanted to add to that, sir?
Well, to go along with what Pablo was saying, which is, right on target, I should also say that talking to one of our processors yesterday, what I found is sometimes the numbers don't add up. So let's say your numbers add up to 25,000, the application is for 35,000 or whatever the number may be. So, we are having to contact each customer, making sure that we go through the numbers with them, making sure that it's accurate, because otherwise we just can't process the application. So the accuracy of the loan amount based on the facts that you have to provide is extremely important.
No, great point. And I do know that because there are very specific calculations based on the payroll and or rent roll needs. So it's specific to the application. So Señor Muñoz.
Thank you for that. And by the way, I didn't say what a great job you've been doing as a chairman of the Greater Miami Chamber. I really appreciate your hard work for the very long time. So thank you for this year up. I appreciate all your work. What's interesting is that 4 weeks ago or less, 3 weeks ago, none of the bankers, none of us really understood this program at all. We didn't, because it didn't exist. And for us to be able to get our arms around this type of a program and then to be able to feed back information to our clients was something of not only an emergency, but everybody had to get up to speed pretty quickly. the verification process that the SBA requires really has a lot to do with the banks needing and wanting to obtain the guarantee of the SBA. So if we don't verify correctly as banks, if we submit without understanding the information, if we submit without a full application, the SBA can turn around and say, well, two things. A, we're not going to forgive the loan, that it's part of the forgiveness program. And number two, the bank itself is not guaranteed under the program either. And so the bankers have been very careful to say, okay, look, here is a normal application process. We're the ones responsible for allocating and putting the applications through. And we're the ones that need the SBA's approval so that we can get the guarantee at the end. And what's happened here is lacking information through our verification process requires us to slow that process for that one individual down whilst we're processing others whilst they're re-gearing. So we're telling our clients up front, get it right first. Do the right job yourself. Submit complete applications, and we'll be able to move very quickly to get your ENT, your E-Tran number, which is electronic transaction number. Once you have that, you're fine, but it's been that delay on the client side and the verification process. Remember, 90% of the individuals here do want that grace period, that forgiveness moment that will come sometime during this process in the next many months, but they will be forgiven. A lot of this loan will be forgiven.
And Roberto, I'm glad you brought up the forgiving part of this loan process, because I know everybody wants their money and they want to secure the funds. It's critical, right? It's how business works. Money comes in and money goes out, because that's how you turn around and make money. And I think you're making a really important point, because these funds are going out, but there are terms and there are requirements in order for you to get these funds back. There's 75%. If I'm correct, that are related to your payroll costs, and
yes,
anything that's employee benefit related as well. And you have to show that you kept those things in line. And for everybody's on the call, we're not going to go into detail about this. You really need to speak to a professional, to the bank, look at the documents that are signed. And if not, there's been great webinars. As a matter of fact, our own sponsor, MBAF, has done these webinars also explaining what happens after you get this loan. And then there's other things related to the rent payments and so forth. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to leave that clarifying. There's a couple of questions I'm going to pause right now in the interim that are coming up regarding the order of loans. And so the short answer is no, the insights are not going to be provided on a first come, first served during this call. And I'll explain why. There's 3 different banks here. They're not going to solely identify their own processes in here. They've clarified how they were addressing loans. So those things are under review with the SBA, and how the loans came in, whether it was digital, and how the digital gets displayed and distributed from that point. You've heard a lot of comments around missing information, missing documentation. Obviously, larger corporations have a whole CFO who had everything ready in 3 seconds to submit, probably, whereas unfortunately, if I was my business owner myself, and this was my office where I'm at, I might not have had any of that stuff at my fingertip. There's so many reasons. It's not one answer. So the only insight I can tell you is the answer is it depends on the situation, depends on the customer. It's not such a simple answer. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to start moving around, the next subjects. Within our community, how important was this for our economics? I want you to think of the economics of this community. We are a huge small business area, and if not mistaken, most of your activity has been with smaller businesses, not necessarily larger businesses. I don't know if you can elaborate I know we all have privacy laws, so we don't have to elaborate whom or which companies, although many of them have raised their hand to say, where can I testify on how this process went? We've had that reaction, but please, if any of you guys can chime in and share what is the importance of this to really get our economy going, because then I want to start leading to some future items. So Jorge, I'm going to come back to you first.
Sure, thank you, Felipe. And like you well said, it's huge because of the composition of our community, with small businesses. So it's tremendously important to do that. I fully agree with your comments. The smaller companies are having a more difficult time compiling all the information that they need. Another component of the community that is also being affected by this is the nonprofits. In many cases, they do receive grants and things like that, which are continuing. However, it is also true that they also generate their own revenues. And as a result of that, they are also applicants, and thousands of people actually work in that particular industry, which we don't sometimes think of. So in that case, not only are they employing, but they're also providing services that they're trying to maintain, but they probably can't provide 100% like they were before. Now, as I said before, things like the stimulus checks and the unemployment checks and things like that are helping the community, and we're starting to see some of that money flow out. So that would be some help to get the community going. We see a lot of cash going through our bank, particularly the ATMs, right? And so that's a proof that money's moving and it's going somewhere, but there's no doubt that, it is affecting our community, and it will for a while.
Definitely. There's no doubt on that one. Pablo, chime in, sir.
Yeah, actually, and I think Greg Braca was interviewed, our president CEO was interviewed yesterday on CNBC, and as he was explaining, out of the 26,000 applications that we processed during the first round, 82% of those were for businesses with less than 25 or less employees. We, locally, daycare centers, not-for-profits, you name it, restaurants, and it's great to see their ability to basically get their employees and keep them on the payroll and get them to the next phase. And hopefully, as we start opening back the economy in the next few weeks, these employees are back. So, really proud to see all the banks stepping up and helping the local economy.
No, Pablo, I can't wait to get out and get un cortadito, because I just don't make it the same way at home. And it's just, I need to get out there. I mean, we're in Miami, but we do need to be safe. And then that definitely is great. Roberto, anything to add there, sir?
Yeah, I copy on both of those discussions. In general, our tourism industry, as you know, has been greatly affected. Nobody's moving. We have hotels with thousands of rooms that are empty right now, thousands upon thousands. And you have mortgages that have to be paid. And so far, the economy, although is on the employment side of the house, it could spill over into the real estate side with disruptions going on. So the faster we get to the bottom of this one and get people back to work, America's not built to be paid to stay at home. We don't pay people to stay. That's not the way that our particular economy works. And so this situation that we're in right now is very, very unusual, of course, for us, historically unprecedented, but and perhaps it will happen again if there's a second wave. I'm not sure about the second wave, but we have to make sure that everybody is back to work, small companies, and that the large companies also, like the Carnivals of the world, that are very influential in Miami. Now, people have different comments about that type of industry, but that's okay. We're in Miami. It's a fundamental part of our trade and logistics operation, and we have to make sure that that industry, all trade and logistics, is up and running, and that people are getting paid. And the banks have the primary brunt of that responsibility today.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And I think it's important. I wanted to point out something that Alfred posted out there after I made a comment before, and I heard this on President Trump's debrief a couple of days ago. According to the SBA, 74% of the loans given out were under 150,000, which would indicate that they were to small businesses. So, I think you see the Shake Shack, and I hate to, put them under the bus, and it's actually a good story in the end. And Harvard University already responded as well. They're pushing the money back in, which is great, which will give money to others. I mean, and those were substantial dollars, because 150,000 here, or the Shake Shack was it 11 million? Am I speaking out of line?
I think 10 or 11.
10 or 11, yeah. So there's a lot of people we could do with 10 or 11. So those are a good point. And there's some great questions that we'll get to walk on there. And Alfred's also adding, the PPP loan is one component of it. The SBA, which they're processing these loans, we can't answer these questions. On the economic injury disaster loans, which we're familiar post-hurricanes typically, that they've added additional funding to that, because I know that those loans are still in process and people are very much still waiting in line to get the answers on those. So let's talk about the future. And Irby, I did see your comment on the cortadito. Love you. That's awesome. So one of the things that I think is critical is that we look to the future. And, I think Jorge Villacampa already started talking about this. I can only imagine Wells Fargo dominates the the Miami market with its retail distribution and presence. I can only imagine, even with with the amount of customers you have and the traffic, because it's fair to say we still have a lot of branch or store or financial center, banking center traffic. What's this gonna look like in the future? I mean, there's so much that we've changed, and people are now digitally banking, more ATM usage. What do you? And again, these are just your thoughts. So, what do you foresee? What's gonna happen?
Well, I have been through a lot of things, right? In the years I've been in banking, probably the one that tested us the most was Hurricane Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
And, I ran the South Dade area at that time, and we had a lot of branches out there. It was disastrous. And we see Homestead all of a sudden, has bloomed over the last few years and just doing great. So this is a disaster like none other we have faced. But to me, it feels a little bit like 9/11. You remember business came to stop, airlines were not flying. I know I had people that worked with me that had gone out on business and were stranded in places, and they had to get back, rent cars and things like that. And we did survive that. We are a very resilient country and a very resilient community, and we will overcome. We'll come back. When, I don't know. I think that there's a good chance that it will be sooner rather than later, but there's no question that some of the more disfranchised members of our community, both business and personals, are the ones that are going to be affected the most.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's going to be interesting because we hear a lot of this task force from the governor, the mayor, everyone. What's it going to look like? What do you open first? And we know Georgia is being very aggressive right now and saying, there was some questions as to some of the ones that are rolling out. And I think the mayor of Las Vegas had an interesting interaction with Anderson Cooper last night. But the point being is that, these things we're going to be better for this. It's just how we are as Americans. I firmly and hopefully believe that. I just got to get through this because it's like you said, it's like none other, but it'll be interesting to see what the future holds. So Pablo Pino, in your mind, what do you think the future is going to be like in the banking world?
Yeah, it's definitely, as we deal a lot in my sector, a lot of commercial customers. And I think the ones that were up and running electronically with all the bells and whistles appreciate that because, they have positive pay, they have online access, they could do wires. The ones that were hesitant and, resisted getting the technology had to quickly get up to speed. Because as everyone knows, right, a lot of the branches, stores are not available, the lobbies. So making appointments to make an appointment to process a wire, things like that has been difficult. So I think everyone should really consider, if you haven't in the past, really automating as much as you can of your banking because it makes life a lot easier in situations like this. And we're seeing that. Folks are, that didn't get an opportunity to do it. They're doing it and we're helping with it. But it's really, really important that to consider more efficient ways to do your banking. So you don't have to be running to the bank for certain things.
Yeah. No. It's a great point. Roberto, your thoughts?
South Florida as a whole has about, I think, about 2,000 branches. About 100, more or less 100 banks, about 2,000 branches, about 250 billion of deposits, according to the FDIC. South Florida does not include all of Palm Beach. It's a little bit of a smaller region. You would think it would include all of Palm Beach, but it doesn't. But our MSA, as an example, has on the branch side been experiencing a decline over time as technology becomes your telephone. And as people are getting more familiar, especially the youth, and they get familiar with banking as they get older now, they're very much inclined to use technology. I think the interesting part of this whole dynamic of the silver lining is our ability now to be able to communicate. And by the way, without G5 will change a whole lot. A whole lot of technology is going to be driven through a G5 technology. We're all being driven through G4, G3. And so what's going to happen is our ability to communicate from home will allow us to be, I think, more effective. I tell you, I haven't worked more hours than being at home, and you'd figured I'd be on vacation, but I haven't worked more hours in my life. I told my wife, I want to go back to work. The hours are you wake up in the morning and you just get a cup of coffee, you sit down and crank it out until the sun goes down and you continue cranking. So the hours have been long. And so the reality is now we're feeling comfortable. I think managers like ourselves, I mean, look, I've been in business, and I hate to say it now, 40 years, but it's a 40-year, and we're used to seeing our co-mates every day physically. And so I think by reducing that, I was on the road the other day to go get some groceries. There was no traffic. We build roads for 20% of the overflow. So if you take off 20% of the people from using the roads, you don't need new roads. That money by the state and by local governments can be used for other infrastructure needs and activities that are just as pressing and just as needed within our communal approach. I think the banks have been jump-started. Their technology, as Pablo was saying, I agree. It's easier now to tell a client, listen, you should be on a technology platform. Not only that, but you can access all your payroll faster. And that's why the discussion before of there are CFOs that gave information instantly. Well, the mom and pops, and I worked with them, and I still working with them. They have to go into boxes in the back of a closet to find information. And let me tell you, that's a tough call because they're working a bunch of hours that they shouldn't be doing because they're just not as organized or don't have enough. They run the front of the shop and they run the back of the shop. So they're exhausted per se. So they have all this paperwork everywhere, but we're working with everybody. And look, we will get through this. We are America at the end of the day. We all believe in this country. And of course, I believe in Miami, and Miami is, for me, the Diamond City. So we're definitely, we'll be back up and running pretty quick as soon as we can.
No, thank you. I love the comment on Miami, and I know Jorge and Pablo very well. I know how much they love Miami too. So
all of us do.
Yeah, I know it's special to all of us. So a couple other items to go over, and then I'm going to go ahead and answer some of the Q&A that, or start positioning some of them so you guys can answer them. The future of what we're going to, if you had a crystal ball, close your eyes and open your eyes, how can Miami be socially distant? I mean, I think I see you gentlemen, I get a hug. I see my friends, family. I mean, I meet people. I mean, it's who we are in South Florida. I mean, here's the summary of where I'm going. Pablo, Jorge, Roberto, you summed up in the future. There's an underlying statement that you take on. Transactions will change. I believe the way we transact, whether it be business, we can do virtual, we can sign documents now virtually. I mean, there's all this stuff that we're doing. So transactions are evolving and definitely accelerating into the digital world. But our interactions, because banking is a relationship-based business. Just your thoughts on that one, then we're going to open up to Q&A, and I'm going to come back to you first, Roberto.
Well, that's a tough one to answer.
Okay, wait, Jorge, and also one of the things to add there, and I'm curious as to how you think the interactions at retail branches will be too, because we're, some are larger, some are smaller. Sorry.
So that's a very difficult question to answer because we are who we are and we love it, right? Being who we are. We spend a lot of time in our company in social distancing, and we learn things new every day. So for example, we're fine, as far as our team members are concerned. The detailers are spread apart, and we don't have as many people in the branches because we don't have the capacity. Customers understand that. We have some very busy branches, so we are around all that. But then you start thinking about things that are as simple as a banker is taking an application or getting something signed, and then they will lend their pen to the customer. Well, the customer takes it, gives it back to them. What happens? There's no sanitation there. Or a teller, passes a tube right through the drive-through. It comes back. We need to make sure that they wipe it. So there's just so many things that we're so accustomed to doing that we don't think are important. We think about the big things, but not the little things. So it is very difficult to say what will happen in the future, but I do think people are becoming a lot more aware of all those things. I was reading an article today where for the Asians, for example, it's become a lot easier to wear masks because they're used to it. They've had more issues like this than we have. So it's difficult, but it will certainly change our social habits.
Senor, I'm sorry, great point. Senor Munoz.
You know, the interesting thing about Miami, we're an international city. We're talking about social distancing to try to limit the growth or the transfer of the virus or any sickness between human beings. But yet we're an international city, and when I say that as bankers, we travel. The international community in Miami travels throughout Latin America, and we travel a lot. And our clients need to see us. They need to touch us in the form of understanding what we're thinking about and what we're doing. And so we're in airplanes, we're in tight spots, we are exposed to environments. You might have a mask on, but again, there's a lot of ways for this virus to kind of get you. So the reality there is the social distancing is the only way that we understand right now. There is no vaccine, and we're still experimenting with drugs. It looks like social distancing and being locked up or controlled in a controlled environment is the best way to stop this. But again, there will come a moment when all this has to come to we have to work. We have to get back to what our business is. I have my box of gloves and I have my masks here at home. I don't use them at home, but I can tell you that when I go out, I do. So that will be a common environment. Talking about Jorge, I worked 15 years with the Japanese, and I happen to have grown up in Hong Kong from 9 to 15, even though I'm a Miami person. And they're used to wearing masks all the time. You're exactly right. And they're used to bowing, and they don't hug, and they're just as loving, and they love each other just as much as we do here. But they have a different form of doing it. And so we have to just adopt new ideas and new standards for this activity. But yeah, I agree with everything.
No, great points. And yeah, culturally, they have their differences that probably allows for acceleration of the change. Pablo Pino, words from you, sir.
Yeah, I think completely agree. We even have customers that are basically telling us we're not accepting any visitors, any vendors. They have procedures. And I think this is the norm, and gradually we'll get back to normal over time. But I think everyone's adjusting, and as long as everyone's aware what we're trying to accomplish, I think we'll get through this. And before you know it, in a few months, or maybe 18 months from now, or 12 months from now, when we have vaccine, we'll be back to normal, hugging everyone.
No, that's that's a great point. I love it. Un besito. ¿Cómo estás?
Besito con cafecito.
There you go. So no, great points, gentlemen. And we're gonna run and there's a couple of questions that we've gathered up here through the interactions that I want to position, and you know, one of you can choose to answer because they're pretty straightforward. And then I do have some for the rest of you, but first thing to clarify for everybody is the ILDL loan. There is a link on our chat Q&A section there, or in the chat box, sorry. I have all of them open. In there, if you want to go in there, it has a link to apply for that one. So that's going to be important. And that's something I want everybody to be aware of. The first thing is that we have here, it has to do with a sub-S commercial industrial real estate company. So this happens a lot. The fact that I don't have a payroll, I don't have employees, right? So and I'm going to keep it I'm going to combine a couple here, because there are partnerships, or there are different types of companies that the owners and or the people who are part of the company, who are generating the money, making money, their payroll as they view it, are not necessarily W-2 payrolled employees. So they are either K-1 distributions for partners or owners. There are 1099 employees. And then I'm going to go on to the second phase of that, because there's a gig economy question that's lying there. But if somebody can take the questions on, they're trying to apply for this loan. Their pay is only the net profit of the company, which would be a K-1 distribution, if not mistaken. Any suggestions on how to apply and receive the PPP loan? Who would like to take that one?
There are, first of all, let me start by being very direct. A lot of the questions that are going to be asked are technical, very technical in nature, and haven't really been cleared through the processing that we're doing today. We are very much concentrated on getting the E-Tran numbers out there and getting funded in the accounts. We know that you can't get a PPP a loan at the same time as an SBA structure You can't get both. You can't be double funded. However, you can be funded by getting unemployment money from the state on stimulus, IRS stimulus package in the form of a stimulus check to the IRS. You can get those as double. You cannot double up on these payments. And to be able to convert one to the other is a very complicated task. I'll give you an example. I'm letting all my clients know, I need you for the PPP to open a separate account. This is the simplest way for the IRS, and since you are a client of the bank, it's easy for us to open a second account. We've already cleared the compliance. We've already cleared all the know your KYC and know your client, and all the things related to compliance, Patriot Act. So by opening a second account, they can easily verify to the IRS that they've paid 75% for payroll and the 25% for electric and rent and the rest for them to get forgiveness. The other loan is a long-term loan and a long-term structure. So it's a little bit of a different program for us to work with right now.
And Roberto, what about if I'm a gig employee? I myself, I get 1099s. I could have various ones. I'm not going to qualify for unemployment. So can I participate in the PPP program?
I haven't processed that type of loan at this particular moment.
Yeah.
I can't respond at this second, but the good news about our discussion is that we will respond back very quickly to you, and we'll get that back to the participants.
And there's a couple of them in there. Spencer, if you can please post onto the chat box an email address or secure information. If you can actually probably direct a question to some of the people who are asking specifically around the 1099 and or gig economy. I mean, I know I can see the names in there who are asking about that over that. And there's the partnership question as well. There's 3 different questions specifically posed around those areas. So Alfred Sanchez is asking a question. I'm going to 3-part it, so I'll separate it out, and each one of you can get one of these. This is interesting. When the PPP money comes down, so meaning the second round is what I'm assuming on this one, those who didn't get funded in the first round, because although we were cleared, there's still a lot of people in process there that have that E-Tran number from the first round. The SBA still has not finished their process. That's why it doesn't happen always from one day to another. We are dependent on SBA. And you heard the number of sheer apps that we're taking in, and the government, the SBA group, has to take in, and concur on the recommendation from the bank, for to keep it in layman's terms. So what I want to be clear about is, do they have to reapply? So let's say this is an interesting dynamic. I'm a company, I applied, I never got confirmation of anything. Pablo, what would you say? Do I have to go ahead and now reapply again when we open up the application process after the funding happens?
Yeah, my recommendation is to contact the bank as soon as possible and try to find out if you were able to, were they successful in securing a E-Tran number for you. If they were, once you have an E-Tran number, there are 10 calendar days for funding. And if they did secure E-Tran number, I think it's a matter of time, and it should be, you could actually find out exactly when they secured that, because they have 10 calendar days from there to fund your account. It's better to probably do that than to go ahead and submit another application, not to flood the system. But if you cannot get in touch with your banker or the bank, then I would definitely go ahead and apply and get it ready to go, because it's probably better than just waiting around. Again, timing is going to be critical, and the funds, as you saw, went very, very quickly. So if you can't get in touch with the bank and get an answer on that, definitely submit another application. Worst case scenario, by the tax ID, they're going to identify that the same entity is applying twice, and they'll cancel one out. But the first recommendation is try to contact your banker and find out where exactly are you in the cycle.
Okay, no, excellent point. And I think that that's fair. Jorge, contact the bank. I mean, all banks have a different process of what they've been doing. I know banks have been active. I'm sure they've been processing and actively looking at the ones that didn't make it in before the SBA ran out of money. So there's people in the process. And if we applied again, you're not going to be double dipped, because there's a bit of a guardrail on that, correct? Yes, we're shaking our heads. Yes. So what happens is if you already get the money, you just have to stand it down. Because we've had tons of customers that have applied. They bank with 3 different banks. Guess what? They applied with all 3 banks to see who responded first. And you know, that's where we're at with that one. There's a couple of other questions that we have coming through. And by the way, to end on this subject, the third part of that question that Alfred was asking was, can I apply now? If I didn't apply the first round, maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I was gathering the documents that I needed. Maybe I didn't understand it. Maybe I didn't know. For whatever reason, I didn't apply. Can I apply right now for this next round?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
And your portal is open to taking the app, Jorge, at
Absolutely.
Wells Fargo?
And we continue to process applications as they come in. Yeah.
And your portal is open to taking the apps. Pablo, it's fair to say our portal is not, but we will be reopening it, correct? At TD?
We basically will reopen it once the SBA opens up.
Fair enough, Roberto. And yours
Open it up once they fund the second round.
Once they open. Okay. So stay tuned, folks, for the ones asking. As soon as you hear that president sign that bill and the funding starts happening, that'll be a great time to go over it and go back in and apply for it. So here's the great question that I enjoyed just seeing here, because I know we started talking about this, but I think we need to go back a little bit more. And I do want to elaborate. I know Tanya's positioning the question back to us. On the PPP, just some three words of advice to make sure that you get the loan forgiven. So we talked about that earlier. There's 75% on the payroll side, 25% on the rent rolls and stuff. Anybody just some quick words of advice of what they need to do, because they need to get more specific information on that. But for this purpose of our discussion, it'd be great just to leave them with some thoughts.
My understanding is that the SBA continues to revise and provide further guidance on the forgiveness part, so it's subject to change. However, as Roberto mentioned, you don't have to, but it's a good practice to separate an account, put the proceeds in there. I actually heard from a non-for-profit yesterday that they actually created an Excel spreadsheet, and they're putting all the different categories that they could qualify. And they're, basically putting all the expenses and tracking all the expenses in that Excel spreadsheet under different categories: rent, interest, all that good stuff. So it's a lot easier to qualify. So those are some of the best practices we're hearing out in the market.
Excellent point.
Yeah, real quick, as we were on the call, I just reached out to our SBA expert at the bank. 1099 employees can apply, and also if you are a one-person company, yes, you could basically apply. It's Schedule C that you would have to provide.
Yeah.
I think those are some of the questions out there.
There's a question that came through around, can PPP use for employee retention? And that, yes, it has to be. Its intent is to use for that. If not, you're going to be on the hook for a loan with the SBA, and you'll be responsible to pay that back with the interest on that portion. If you're not, that's why what Pablo was just sharing, the best practices and what we've commented on even earlier in the process around making sure that you track your payroll and the 25% of the other expenses. It's going to be critical. If not, you're on the hook for a loan. So the interesting part, though, is on this question, and I'm pulling it back up, is can the EIDL be used for recapitalization? There's been some questions because there's 7A loans that exist out there. There's different types of loans. If I want the emergency loan, I don't think we can address that as much. That's an SBA managed process. So I don't know if that's for us or if any of you gentlemen are willing to go down the EIDL loan from the SBA. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me take a shot. The EIDL loan, which covers basically working capital,
right,
fixed debt, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that have been paid. It's a different structure. It is loans that are not intended to replace lost sales or enable business expansion.
Right.
Basically, what this is that it's a hardship loan. Collateral is not required up to $25,000, or lack of collateral will not hinder you from getting a loan. The maximum is up to $10,000.
Yep.
In the emergency grant part of it.
And you can you apply for both at the same time
you can apply for all of it at the same time.
That's the key.
And then your terms are 3.75% or 2.75% for nonprofits for 15 or 30 years, depending on the borrower.
Yeah. For $10,000, that's a small payment if I amortize.
No, yeah, but a lot of them are going much higher. This is for the grant side of it.
Yeah.
There is a loan side that goes much, much higher.
Yeah. And that is SBA handled.
They can go up to $2 million. That program is up to $2 million.
Is that handled through the bank or through the SBA directly?
It's an SBA structure. The bank can help.
And those are different than the PPP when they come in through the channel, just so you all know.
Different.
Yep. All right. Excellent. I think we've gotten through a lot of our questions overall, because I'm actually getting it on the phone. I've got 2 of them open here, just trying to make sure we've done that. Now, gentlemen, I have one more question for each one of you, and then we're actually going to go ahead and transition it over to the chair of our Banking and Finance Committee. And Spencer, if you can hear me, I just want to confirm that Gladys is available to address the group. There you are, sir.
I can handle that. She is knee deep, or maybe ear deep in loan.
Right.
So
well, Irby's, or Irby's there too, but that's fine now. For that, I just wanted to hear from her. But yeah, I figured she would be. Thank you for that. Gentlemen, the 3 of you specifically, specifically for the 3 of you overall, this has nothing to do with banking. This is just a way to end this meeting and change it up a little bit. It's fair to say that, and I know you've been working very hard, but I'm probably betting money that each one of you have been binge watching something, either in Netflix, on your catching up. We just want to know what it is. So Pablo Pino, what has been your guilty pleasure binge watch during this time?
Actually, believe it or not, it's more comedy. When I get a chance after 12, 14 hours to go through Netflix and finding just some comedian stand-up stuff just to relax, and going out for a walk at least once a day for an hour or so, just to decompress, because it's pretty long days, as everyone was saying.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Mr. Munoz.
I'm just going to say exactly what it is. I've gotten very close to my wife. I love she's my partner in life. I got to tell you, it's just normal business that I love her to death. But boy, I got to tell you, I've gotten even closer in this last month, and it's really nice to have this time together with her and the family. That's been my Netflix, and that's been my fun time, is to just listen to her and just have conversation. Really,
and you must be a lot to take in. So I can only imagine the poor thing. I mean, if she's still there, holding on for you, Roberto, that is beautiful, man. And thanks for sharing that, because that's awesome, man. And that's great. Senor Villacampa, what's on the Netflix list?
Well, Maggie and I'm not much of a television watcher, but Maggie and I have been watching, I believe it's called Money Heist. It's kind of like a Spanish James Bond with English subtitles. And it's been very entertaining. We went through the first 3 chapters, I guess, and now we're waiting for the new series to come out. So it's been very entertaining, and actually I've stayed awake, which I hardly do when I watch TV.
It's funny. There's somebody I know who's laughing because he told me about watching it, and I know he's on this, so this is great. And Spencer, since you really want to share, I am going to embarrass you by saying you are the only one who answered Tiger King. I'm just saying, because I have not seen it. Nobody else has seen it. And I have been wanting, and to the point, I haven't been able to really do it. You would think I'd have this. This is Netflix binge watching time, but we've been pretty busy, but I can't wait to get to the 3rd series of Ozark for myself. So that one's a great show, but it was just to lighten up the moment here a little bit overall. But I know Gladys couldn't join us. I know she is our chair of our Banking and Finance Committee for the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. She's done an excellent job this year. And so I know we have some closing comments though. So Alfred, I'll turn it back over to you. Before I do, Pablo, Roberto, Jorge, muchísimas gracias. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. You guys are great and appreciate your time. And by the way, we hit over 180 people, just because you can't really tell here. We're down a little bit now. I think people hang out for a while, but we can only be on Zoom for so long. But you guys have done a great job. And thank you to everybody who has joined us today, because it's been wonderful, and it's part of a new normal. Alfred, back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Felipe. Thank you to all our panelists and to our sponsors at MBAF. I want to point out that in the chat, we did mention that the Chamber is going to be offering direct hands-on services to all our small business members. You have to be a member of the Chamber, but we're offering hands-on service to help you walk through the PPP and the IEDL and other loan sort of recovery vehicles that are out there, should you have questions. And Mary Lou, I think, posted the link that will go live tomorrow. We'll be working through the weekend, available through the weekend, so that we are there throughout the PPP loan processing. But more importantly, or as importantly, I should say, we're going to be there for the long haul, because at some point you have to then get your paperwork together to prove that you've spent at least 75% on payroll to get it rolled into a grant, instead of having to pay the loan back. So we'll be there, and you can access that. Again, you have to be a member. It doesn't matter what level member you are. It's free service, and our trained staff will be providing that. So please look for that. This concludes our fourth Chamber Roundtable. I thank everybody who's been on board here and who've come back several times. If you want to get more information, visit our website at miamichamber.com, and there we have a whole COVID-19 toolkit for you and your business. And I also would call your attention again to our business survey that really gives some interesting insights into how our business community was impacted in the early stages. And again, thanks to MBAF for sponsoring that. We hope that you've been pleasantly not surprised, but pleasantly happy with our program, that it's answered your questions. And we hope to see you back here next Thursday for another Chamber Roundtable. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. Great leadership.